All right, guys, welcome back to another One of None podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Dr. Andrew Ganung.
I'm your other host, Dr. Jonah Casella.
And I know I say this about a lot of our guests, but we have a very special guest today. It is Billy Werner. He is one of my definitely my longest standing best friend on this podcast so far, and probably one of my longest standing best friends. We've been friends since, Bill, I don't even know what, kindergarten or like preschool, something like that.
Yeah, way back.
So we go way back, long time ago. So we're about to dive into some really cool conversation with this guy. He can give you perspective on fitness. He can give you perspective on personal finance, business advice, and everything in between. So we're super stoked to have Bill on the pod. So welcome, Bill.
Thanks for having me, boys. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So like we do with a lot of our guests, give us a little bit of a background on kind of where you are at right now in life, what you do, and then we can dive into kind of the childhood part of it. So go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I'll start kind of where I'm at, and then we can cut into kind of my upbringing. But so like Andrew said, I've known Andrew for a long time now. 27. I live right now in Wexford, Pennsylvania, where I grew up. But before this, I did go to school in Chicago. So was able to get out of Wexford, which is really good, I think, for growth. Right now, I work for a big Fortune 500 company full time. And then I have a lot of different other things I dabble with sprinkled in on the side. One of the things I'm most passionate about is my company, Jump for More. So it's started out as a jump rope company, actually. So during COVID, one of my hobbies that I just picked up was jumping rope. I kind of knew how to jump rope as a kid, but never really did it much. And I wish I did, because I think all athletes should jump rope. So we can dive into that some more too in the future. But started picking up the jump rope. All the gyms were closed around the area. So I was doing a lot of calisthenics and running, but then wanted something else as well. So was jumping rope, started learning some skills, and really had a good time with that. So with that, was bored, started creating online. So started posting some videos, and some videos grew some attention, and essentially started my own jump rope line, sold jump ropes in 14 different countries. And fast forward 2.5 years later, now I love the in-person experiences more than anything. So what I focus on is really after school programs for kids, and just mainly teens and kids and youth performance activities. So what that looks like is I go into an elementary school, middle school in the area, and I coach anywhere from 20 to 40 kids. Typically, we don't jump rope that much in those. It's all about making fitness fun for life is our tagline. So that looks a lot like the most epic, legendary gym class games, but after school in a more like relaxed environment, not a kind of strict environment, if you will, like school gym classes can be, and have a good time. So essentially, I get paid to play dodgeball with kids is what I tell people. So I've gotten 2 gym teachers on board, so they're coaching their own programs, and I still help out with them. And that's my one big pitch to them is, hey, here's an awesome opportunity. You can literally play dodgeball with kids, make good income doing it, and have so much fun. So balancing kind of my full-time job with activities like that and other coaching opportunities through a different gym that I work at, in addition to some other work I do, it really keeps me like motivated and kind of active. I think if I was just one-dimensional and just had one job, I would go crazy. And I think you guys are the same way as me there. That's why you guys have this podcast. That's why you guys do the Ironmans, the half marathons. You need something other than your full-time job, which I think is really cool when people do that.
Yeah. And so this, like Bill said, is just one of his side hustles. Before the pod started, I called Billy a serial entrepreneur, and he's quite literally been that way since we were kids. Billy was like, so I'll let you talk a little bit more about your soccer background, which took up a large part of your life growing up. That was the face of Billy for many, many years. But Billy was always the person that was looking for ways to like make money, or he had like different ideas that he was always pitching to me or his parents or like our other friends. And he was always thinking of different cool ideas to just be different. And I think that mindset growing up kind of, well, absolutely translated well into your life now, because you have multiple streams of income, whether it's jump for more, whether it's US Steel, whether it's through investment portfolios, things like that. So you definitely are, you've always been this way as long as I've known you. Even as a kid, we would just like come up with ideas of like selling stuff or, you know, writing up workouts. Like we'd write up random workouts and work out in your garage growing up, or in my garage. If you remember, Billy, we would like spray paint my garage walls with
ruin your dad's garage there. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you've always been that way, so this doesn't really surprise me, and I bet my dad would probably say the same thing too. Like, there's no surprises with you with how many things you're involved in. So, go ahead, Jonah.
Yeah, I have a question about that. I mean, if you were always like that growing up, did you have an influence? Like, were your parents like heavy into like
That's a good question.
finances and like the business side of things? Because mine were not, and do not have that part of me. Like that whole side of business and like coming up with like ideas for businesses and how that all works does not exist in my brain. Like I'm not creative at all like that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I'd say from a parental perspective, my dad was always a W-2 worker, but he's grown in his career, and I've seen that he's in leadership positions. And my mom was a teacher, but they've always done other stuff on the side. Like my mom was always tutoring. My mom was an inner city school teacher, so she actually for 30 years worked at one of the hardest schools in the inner city of Pittsburgh. And she got like knee surgery, breaking up fights, got swung at on the regular. So she's a really tough cookie. But I'd say like the creative mindset and juices, I guess I've always been someone that likes to create and not consume. I think that's a large part of it. And when I have an idea, I like to just go and do it. And I don't really have filters, if you will, which can kind of be a disservice to a certain extent, but I think it's actually a blessing at the end of the day. So instead of just questioning, should I do this or that, I just do it and work at it. And if it doesn't work after a few months or years, then I move on or adjust. So kind of what I did with the jump ropes, right? Like my margins weren't that good. I'd had to sell like 20 jump ropes a day to kind of do somewhat well, which unless I kept spending more, and I wanted it to be more organic instead of doing a lot of spend to then profit. So a lot of it was just organic marketing. I ended up pivoting to this kind of more in-person because I like it more. It's more fun. And it took me 3 years to pivot. And I'm so glad I did. But yeah, so growing up, grew up in a household of two amazing parents. They're still married. They've been married now for, I believe it's 29 years. And they would always wake up at the crack of dawn. My mom would leave for work at like 4:30. My dad would leave for like work at around 5. They drop us, my sister, myself, and my brother off at daycare. And we'd stay there till school, and then we'd get picked up at 6. So they were really hard workers. So they instilled that in me. And kind of what Andrew alluded to. So soccer was my passion. If anyone asked me growing up what I wanted to be when I grew up, which a lot of guys and gals say a pro, whatever they play, that was it for me for sure. I wanted to be a pro soccer player. I identified as a soccer player and had some pretty cool experiences doing that. But I think when I stopped playing soccer, it kind of left a void, and that void was really sparked my like entrepreneurial mindset, because I think it was almost like on the soccer field, I was very creative in my thinking and my playing. And I think that I needed that outlet to do something with that skill that I acquired. So I'd say, if anything, that's where I got the skill and the hunch for entrepreneurship that I have.
Yeah, and you made a really good point by saying that. And like a lot of people are like that too. Like for me, it was always sports as well, whether it was football and then it was rugby. I think just like the competition was something I always loved. And I guess it was a way, like an outlet for me too, to like almost express myself and like a confidence thing as well.
Mhm.
And so like after I was done with undergrad and stuff, I definitely lost that. And I had that in lifting for a little bit, but it wasn't the same. And it wasn't until I really got into like this endurance training and everything that I felt that again.
I was
And
just
I,
gonna ask. Yeah,
yeah. And
I'm
then I
sure the endurance is
realized,
the outlet. Yeah.
right, that, oh, wow, like there was this like void that I didn't realize that this is what it was.
Mhm.
It's just like that.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
competition aspect is huge. Like athletes grow up their whole life competing ever since a young age till whenever they stop playing, whether that's high school, college, or beyond. And then if you don't compete after, you can have some competition at work, but that competition might not fill your
It's not the same.
void,
Yeah.
right? It's not the same as what it was. So I think it's really important for people to find that. So you guys in endurance, and you guys have actually inspired me. I think I'm going to be doing my first half next year. I went to the Pittsburgh Marathon for the first time, and it was electric. And I have not trained at all for, I'd say, anything run over, say, like 6-7 miles, but I could have done the half. I could have maybe even done the full just because of the environment there. It was
I'm telling you.
awesome.
Yeah.
It's
It was electric for sure when I was
Yeah.
there.
Yep.
Bill, I want I'm going to give you permission to flex a little bit because I know you wouldn't boast about yourself. You don't have that personality, but unless you want me to say it, but about your soccer background. So Billy was a top tier soccer player in Pennsylvania. In high school, he was probably the face of North Allegheny soccer. He I mean, you probably were top 10 in Pennsylvania ranked, right, for a number of years. He played at Loyola University in Chicago. He played collegiate there. He had actually signed, he had committed to University of South Carolina for soccer before he
Mhm.
ended up committing to University of Loyola or Loyola University. You were top 10, were you not, in like high
Yeah,
school?
I can share. I don't know like specifics there, but I had some cool experiences. So like growing up, I was able to represent Team USA in Italy at a tournament, and then had some opportunities to go to London to play for an EPL academy called West Ham Academy. And then growing up, though, so like I said before, like I identified as a soccer player. We can get into this more, but I really didn't take school too seriously growing up because I never touched the school bag outside of school. I would go and play soccer all day, every day if I wasn't in school. But yeah, so growing up, I had a lot of cool opportunities. And then in high school, I started tearing my ACL actually. So tore it the first time freshman year and then recovered from that. And actually, uh, you'll see a theme here, but I tore it a few times. But after every tear, is actually better. And Andrew might be able to kind of communicate as to why that might be. I think from my perspective, it was I had some time to rest and recover and almost like get my mind out of the game. And I came back even more creative because I wasn't so like robotic, if you will. But so I tore my first one freshman year of high school, came back, kept playing at a pretty good level with my club team here in Pittsburgh. Ended up tearing my other ACL, so my left ACL, around 10 months after the first one. And then recovered from that. And then I went 2 years without it. And I actually moved to Minnesota junior year of high school to play there for an academy out there. And we played in the MLS Academy world. Then going into senior year, tore my third one. Again, it kind of sucks. It kept happening. So that was my left knee again. So it was left, right, left. And at that point in time, I had committed to South Carolina, like Andrew was saying, and they kind of revoked my scholarship. Loyola had already offered me before, so went to Loyola. And actually, interesting fact there, my wife was already committed to play at Loyola for soccer as well. So she's a soccer stud herself. And going into in preseason, when I was playing, I did it again. So I tore my fourth ACL. Yeah, it kept happening. And right then and there, I did get surgery, but made a hard decision whether I should get surgery or not. Kind of goes back to the point. I think, Andrew, you might have said this on the podcast before, but the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And still got the surgery, even though that definition was in the back of my head, and recovered from that, but ended up stopped playing in college at that point. I figured, hey, if it keeps happening, it's going to happen again, most likely. It took actually a lot out of me, and I still think it impacts me to this day. Having something be taken away from you, not on your own accord, I think is very difficult as an athlete. But fast forward again 2 more years, ended up tearing it again. And I didn't get surgery, and now it feels amazing. So lo and behold, I probably shouldn't have gotten surgery. I can play soccer right now, and I think I could have played without an ACL. And if you look at some pro athletes, like a Hines Ward, for example, he played his whole career without an ACL. He tore it as a kid. There's a lot of pro athletes like him that have done that same thing. And Andrew can go into the anatomy and whatever about this, but as long as I think you keep your leg muscles around your joint strong, and it's very dependent on the person, you don't need an ACL necessarily. So feels great now. Can't tear it again. So let's get it.
The will, though, I mean, people listen to that and kind of are just like, wow, that's crazy. But the will to go through surgeries over and over and over again. I remember in high school, I'd go over to Billy's house on a weekend, and it was like right after he had surgery, and we'd just go and play COD for like 5 hours every day because he was bound to a couch. And he would just do heel slides in between like matches when we'd be loading, waiting to play zombies or something, and he would just be doing heel slides. And that happened over and over and over again. So it was like that growing up. Like he was just always rehabbing, and if he wasn't rehabbing, he was playing soccer. So
you know this best too. Like ACL recoveries, you're doing a ton of leg raises, straight leg raises. And I actually think, like I love calisthenics, which you know very well, but like L sit pull ups, anything straight leg movement wise, I think is so strong for me because my hips are so damn strong from all those dang straight leg raises. Yeah. So they paid off. All the injuries paid off somehow. So
a lot of the current literature out there, I'm not going to go too deep into PT stuff, but a lot of the current literature out there says that if you return to sport less than, I think it's 9 months, there's a 7 times re-tear rate of ACLs. And that's pretty updated literature. So Billy said that he tore his ACL 10 months after his first tear. Yep. And so a lot of people nowadays, Odell Beckham Jr., a lot of the pro athletes that are tearing their ACLs, they're waiting about a full year now because that's the safest. And even Odell, I think he waited probably at least 9 or 10 months, and then I think he retore it again when he was playing with the Rams. So, I mean, it's tough to see Billy do it like 5 or 6 times, but it probably created a lot of adversity out of you. But that's the thing that also makes Billy tick is I don't want to speak for you, Billy, but I feel like you don't really think a whole lot. You just do. And that's a powerful thing that a lot of us need to do. We get caught up in like the thoughts limiting us. You're laying in bed thinking about what you have to do for the day, or you're sitting there waiting your shoes are right in front of you, but you don't want to put them on to go to the gym or go for a run. And you're the type of person that doesn't really think, you just do. Like you wake up in the morning, I sit in bed for 15 minutes before I get out of bed. Growing up, your alarm would go off and you'd get up. That was just the way that you were. And I'm sure you're still that way, right?
Funny story there. In college, shared a room with one of my best friends, and mainly to save money because Chicago rent was expensive. And I would put my phone alarm in our bathroom, and my bed was on the opposite side of the bedroom. And as soon as it went off, I had to wake up and sprint to get my alarm because I didn't want my roommate to wake up. And I'll tell you what, that's the best way to wake up. Never put your phone next to you because you're forced to go get it, especially if you're in the same room as someone. They don't want to hear that dang alarm. So as soon as you get it and turn off that alarm, you're not as likely to go back to bed because you're already up. You already ran and did a quick sprint. And there's one time I wiped out pretty good in the bathroom. It was a little bit wet. I don't know why, but yeah, interesting thing that people.
It's a good
do.
point. And kind of like to add what Andrew was saying. I mean, for people that are not like were not obsessed with a sport growing up, like they may not understand that, but like to be limited by an injury and have to like stop something that you love so much and that you're obviously like extremely good at, like not on your own accord, but just because like you keep tearing your ACL over and over again, like that definitely is like emotionally taxing for sure. Like I can't imagine like how that must have felt, especially like you're finally like you're making these steps, like you're scholarship at a university where you're playing soccer and then have to make the decision to like to stop doing what you love. But like I'm like just meeting you for the first time officially now, and you're like the happiest person ever. And based off of like just these like few minutes that we've been talking, I can just like tell this must be your personality, that you're like a very like high spirited person. And I'm sure that had to have like played into like helping you get through that time. Like it seems like you have a pretty good like mentality in terms of like, all right, this is what it is. Now what? Like,
Yeah, for sure. To get somewhat vulnerable though, I would say so. Like having something like that impact anyone, and it doesn't just have to be sports. It could be any activity, any hobby. But something to stop someone from doing something they love. I think for me, it impacted me, and it still does to this day. I kind of alluded to this, where even though most things I don't have a filter, I just do. If it's something I love to do, I kind of safeguard it, if you will. I think because of that experience, I almost somewhat timid to go all in sometimes. And the reason for that is I don't want to lose that thing again. Which that's something I continue to work on. And it was, I think, totally focused on just because of what happened with soccer. So for example, like, I don't know if you guys like pickleball. I love pickleball. And I'm someone that like, I pick up a pickleball racket, played for my first time 2 years ago, loved it, told my wife, hey, I want to go play pro pickleball. And I've kind of cooled down that, not because I'm scared of like getting injured or anything, but more so like I want to tell myself it's okay to have hobbies. Like it's okay to just have fun, go out there and not think about going pro in that said thing. And I'm sure you guys sometimes experience it too, like with running or when you're on the bike and you're really grooving. You're like, man, I could really push it here. Like maybe I should try to get sponsored or whatnot instead of just doing it out of joy or just pride, you know? So.
that's a huge problem for me. Like my wife can attest to that. It's like I'm like that too. Like I'm 0 or 100 when I get involved in things, and it's like, and then it's like a bad thing too because like with golf is so hard. But for so long, I was like really, really obsessed with golf and wanting to get better to the point where it's like I couldn't like just go to the range and like hit golf balls for fun because if I was having like a bad day, it would ruin my night. And like I had this like when I'm training now for this Ironman, like I had this lofty goal that I set for myself, which like is great to do that, but it's almost like hindering my happiness during my training because if I'm not hitting certain times, then that's like in the back of my mind. Yeah. It's like I just did a 50-mile bike ride, but I did it in 18 miles per hour average instead of 21. And it's like you're not doing this, you're not a pro. Like you're not, like you're saying, like you're not competing, but it's hard to like you're saying, to just, this is a hobby, you know, like I completely understand.
Yeah. It kind of is like the saying like go slow to go fast sort of. So you guys actually recently got me into running. I was telling Andrew this like a few months back, just you guys talking about running. It's making me enjoy running again. But since stopping soccer, I never really enjoyed running because I would think that I could run at the same level as I did then. And it would suck. Like I'd be trying to run at like a really quick clip and wouldn't enjoy it. But now I started slow and I'm still going pretty slow for my paces that I'm kind of used to way back when, but I enjoy it so much. I like get into that runner's high, runner state, and I'm really enjoying it again. And it goes back to like, yeah, I don't need to win a race. I don't need to like win anything. I'm just doing it to do it because I enjoy it. Part of me, and I do some crazy things still, that being said. So like 2 years ago, I decided to lunge a 5K, which was quite crazy. I was training to lunge more. I wanted to lunge more, and I still might try to lunge a half marathon one of these days. The 5K took me an hour and 43 minutes. And it's what you think of it. So it's just walking lunges, no rest in between. As soon as you do your rep, you're right into the next. So it's an hour and 45 minutes of that. And what was funny is this was when I was doing a lot of like remote jump rope stuff, and I had some jump rope clients right after, 3 of them. And so I did like a jump rope class with them and like bodyweight calisthenics class with them right after it. And I was just so beat up. But I think mixing like hard challenges, like say, for example, the half that I might run next year, or that I will run, I'll say I will run at least a half next year, into like things just doing it to enjoy it, I think is a perfect balance that people need to do.
People think that running has to be miserable all the time, so that's why everyone thinks that they hate running. Like, oh, I'm gonna run a half marathon. Oh, why would you ever want to do that? That sounds so miserable. All right, well, yeah, because you try and sprint every 5K that you do. That's not fun. Why don't you go slow? Like, try running slow for an hour and tell me you don't get a little bit of like, some endorphins going, or you don't get a little bit of a runner's high, or throw some music in, or listen to a podcast, or whatever suits you. Just throw in some headphones and go out there and look around while you're running. Like, observe what's around you and get caught up in the moment of you running. And then sure enough, 30 minutes is going to turn into an hour, and then an hour is going to turn into 2 hours. Or run with somebody. Like, it doesn't have to be miserable. People expect that, they think that running's always going to be horrible the entire time. Yeah, I mean, if you're pushing yourself at an extreme rate and your heart rate is in the 180s the whole entire time, yeah, it's going to be horrible, right? But people wouldn't forget to like fall in love with just doing it at a little bit slower of a pace. And I just had that conversation with a patient. She's like, I want to get into running, but I always hated it so much. And I was like, go deliberately slow and run for 30 minutes. And then she came back the next week. I just saw her, one of my patients, and she was like, I actually did that. And I did like an 11-minute mile, and it was so good. And I was like, that's what you've been missing out on. Like, you've just been forcing it so much. It doesn't have to be miserable the entire time. And Billy, I wanted to kind of go back to what you were talking about with your content. And I wrote something down because that's something I picked up from what you do a lot in your content. Billy actually has a pretty big following on social media, especially from the jump roping and just a lot of the positive content you put out. You were doing some like daily stuff where you just like hop on and like take little snippets of yourself throughout the day. And the way that I think of your content is it's super organic, and people pick up on those that are organic. You're not putting on a face. You are yourself completely. And the person that I've known my entire life, the person that Jonah just met, and the person that's following you online is the same exact person you're going to get. Like, there's no difference out of Billy. He's very emotionally stable in every single circumstance. Like, it doesn't waver a whole lot. Like, you're getting the same Billy every single time. And I think that's what people gravitate towards. And I think that's what me and Jonah are trying to do on this podcast too, is like, we don't really care if people like what we put out. We're just doing what we do, and we talk and we have conversations. We did a little bit of a different podcast on our walk with Christ that we titled that podcast, where we dove into our faith. And I think right now, probably not a lot of people are very open to talking about their faith, especially publicly. But we just wanted to be very organic about it. And that's the way we try to approach every single podcast. There's no script. Like I told you, Bill, it's just conversation. And we try and show up as ourselves. And I think that's what creates followership. And especially in your case, that's probably why people love watching your content, is because they just see that you're a real person and that you don't try and put on a face or some persona just for the camera. And I think the same person I get all these years is the same person that the person, or the same person you are is what somebody else is getting as their coach. And so that's the beautiful thing about it. And I think nowadays with social media and how different people are on and off the screen, it creates a very false sense of security for some folks. And so you never know what type of person you're getting. And I think that's why you have a big following, Bill. So I just like, that's the way I think of your content. And I think Jonah and I try to strive to be that same exact way with what the podcast is about.
I appreciate that. I do think so. What you guys do and why even if I didn't know you guys, I would listen to it. And the reason for it is you guys could say the same thing every week. You could say kind of what Joe and I were talking before this, like what you do today, worked, saw this amount of patients, worked out, whatever. You could say that and be done with the podcast. Hearing that weekly or even daily is something that I think a lot of people like resonate with. And they're like, oh, Andrew and Jonah are doing this. I need to make sure I can upskill and like be at their level. And I want to get to their level one day, so organic content is the way. Going back to a few points about social media too. One, going back to the running piece, I think why I've been enjoying running a lot right now is I'm not on my phone at all during it. Maybe I'm listening to a podcast or ebook or music or whatever, or not anything, but you can't look at your phone. Like, whereas in lifting, you can like check your phone mid set. It disrupts everything. There's a really good book. If you guys haven't read it yet, highly recommend it. Dr. Cal Newport, Deep Work. It's all about kind of minimizing distractions, mainly social media and kind of like the scrolling economy, if you will, because not just you being distracted to use your phone in certain circumstances, but the way your brain thinks when you're constantly using your phone for certain things, your brain starts thinking that. So if you're at work seeing patients, your brain might be thinking like so many different things and you're not able to get into that like deep work state, if you will. But yeah, going back to social media too, like I have been off social media for like 8 months or so now. And the reason for that is I was creating so much. I only used Instagram, YouTube, TikTok to create, not consume. But then I started to kind of care about the vanity metrics and I started to look into it more. And like, it was almost like my content wasn't as organic as I wanted to be. And I started doing things to get likes, doing things to get views. And I was like, this is not me. So cold turkeyed it and haven't been on since. And I just feel so much better for a multitude of reasons. But yeah, I think social media is great. It can be amazing. I think a lot of people should use it, but just trying to focus on creating, not consuming is what's most important. And maybe the consumption is not just scrolling, but instead of like that, actually communicating. So you're actually engaging with content you like. So you like stuff, you comment stuff that you like, in whatever capacity that is, and building like a community on there. So that's my 2 cents on social media right now. And you guys are similar boats too. I know like Andrew, you kind of stopped social media for a bit and have been using it less. Jonah, I'm not sure in your world if that's the case too, but I'm sure you guys have noticed an impact if you guys stop using social media.
Yeah, I'll go on like spurts of deleting the apps and stuff. Like I have Facebook, but I don't have the app. So like I rarely am ever on Facebook. Instagram, I'm like trying to like be better about it again. I've deleted off my home screen, but it's still like I don't know how that works with Apple, but it's still like in my library. And so I'll fall into temptation during the day and like go into my library. Like other than that, I'm pretty good. But no, I agree. And when you don't have social media and you're not thinking about it, like it's so sad at work. Like I'm just so programmed that like if I'm in between patients and I finish my chart or whatever, I'll like just grab my phone and instinctively pull up Instagram. And I don't even realize that I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And then I'm like scrolling. I'm like, how did I even get here?
And then like 10 minutes later. And
yeah, right.
What? Yeah.
It's terrible. But
yeah. And another point to that too, like I heard a really good example. So if you're in like at a grocery store, you're checking out, what do you do when you have a free second? Do you go on your phone and check social media? More often than not, people are, instead of embracing kind of the boredom, which I can resonate a lot with. Like lately, I don't check my phone. Like I don't look at it, don't check it. And instead of me looking at it or looking down, I'm having a conversation with the person next to me or the person that is helping me check out, which is just so much more gratifying. I don't know what it is, but I see it too a lot with the kids that I coach. So this spring, I had the pleasure of coaching around like 100-ish kids. And more often than not, when the kids left programs after school, they were already on like their iPads and their phones. And I'd kind of like get under their skin. I'm like, dude, get off your phone, get off your iPad. But they're all playing games. They're all like on YouTube already. But I think a lot of parents, for a lot of reasons, put their kids in after school programs. But that's one of the main reasons is they're scared of their kids just using tablets and phones. And you see it at dinner tables too. Like if you're at a dinner, your kid's acting out, instead of like trying to parent them, instead they're just giving them a screen.
Distracting. Yeah.
Right. So and that's easier said than done. I don't have kids. I hope I'm blessed with kids, but I think parenting is such a unique skill. It's so hard. But yeah, the screens, man, something has to be different. So
For sure. Definitely.
You want to go,
Yeah.
Jay?
I was gonna kind of change the subject a little
wanna
bit.
say-
I had a question, but
Write it down, because I want to say last thing about the vanity metrics Billy talked about. Joan and I do not check our metrics like we used to. When we first started the podcast, we were checking everything. We were like, all right, how many people are watching? What cities and what countries? I think it was my cousin. He was like spending some time in Japan. I think there was one listener in Japan.
nice.
So we were like checking people, like how many views we were getting. I mean, it gives us a little bit of a pulse on what people like and what people don't like. We weren't doing it so much to like please ourselves and make us feel good about ourselves, but that was a result of it. We did see it, and we were like happy to see that there were more people watching. And but at the end of the day, we started this podcast saying if one person listens to it, that's what matters. And we still, to this day, if not then, now more than ever, we still feel that way. We don't look at the metrics at all. I don't know the last time, JC, have you looked at anything recently?
not for a while.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Like we don't look at that stuff anymore. And to be honest, when we make these podcasts, Jonah or I we won't cut anything out unless there's like a little bit of a glitch in the audio, or if a camera cuts out oddly for a second or two, and we'll just like snip that little bit out. But even then, we sometimes just leave it in there because we just want it to be the full, like, no cut conversation. And we just do our little edit to the beginning and the end of it, and then make sure that there's no echo on there, and then we upload it. It's a very simple process. And people, I think if I was doing this by myself, I probably would spend so much time trying to make everything sound perfect, because I'm that way. I'm a perfectionist in a lot of ways, and I'm OCD about those things. But we just stopped caring about the metrics and started producing. And kind of what you were saying, we're producing, not consuming. And we're just trying to create good content for people. And I think that's an important part of growth and success in anything you do. You hear people say, don't chase the money, because if you start to do that, it's probably going to run away from you. But if you go into it thinking, hey, I'm trying to provide you a service, a high quality service, because I care about what you like and I want to make sure that you enjoy my product. If you go into it thinking like that versus what is this person going to pay me for this service, you're going to do heaps better if you go into it thinking, how can I be of service to you, not vice versa. And that's why I think there's a lot of people out there, especially very successful entrepreneurs, millionaires, probably billionaires too, that their initial goal was to just go and help people. And that's when you see the fruits of your labor, is when you care about providing a service to somebody and being genuinely concerned about how they like that product. And I don't know, I think you could probably attest to that too, Billy.
For sure. That makes me think of the quote, comparison is the thief of joy. So like, I think when you, and I was seeing this too, when you start looking at vanity metrics, you start comparing yourself to others more often than not. And it kind of goes back to like not having filters. So just like doing to do, don't think, just do. Like, don't even, it to a certain extreme. This is the extreme. I don't think people should do this, but why consume anything? Why consume like anyone else's, like, for example, news? Why consume the news? Why not just have your own opinion where all these other news platforms are so skewed? Why consume like a bunch of different things, whereas just create because you want to kind of share your message and the joy in that. Yeah, I often get myself caught in like comparison, and I was more. And ever since stopping social, ever since like not really caring as much, and I used to be this way, but as I was getting like more and more followers, I started to think that way. I've gone back to myself. You know, it's almost like I lost myself and then I got myself back, if you will. So
Yeah.
I agree
Yeah.
with that completely. That's cool.
Yeah, I think a mistake that we made in like the juvenile stages of this podcast when we first started was paying too much attention to the metrics, to the point where like we had, I mean, the first couple episodes, like we had like, which is a lot for us, like 100+ viewers. And like after a few episodes and we were like holding strong, like we had the ability to monetize our episodes, and we shared that because it was like, hey, this is awesome, like we're reaching people to the point where like we could actually monetize this.
Mm-hmm.
And we never did. We never ended up doing that, which I think is great because that's just not what this is about. And I feel like that was a mistake in the way that I viewed this. Whenever we started getting viewers, it was kind of like why is that the next like really awesome thing? I mean, it's great to do that for people that do. I'm not taking away from it, but I feel like that took away from like what we were just talking about, what the point of this podcast is about. Like we don't need the extra small amount of income that this podcast would bring, you know, but what it gives to us and what hopefully it gives to other people is like, that's what it's about. So I feel like that was something at the beginning that was a mistake that then I realized afterwards, you know. But if you guys have anything else on that, if not, I'm kind of going to switch it up with a question that I had.
No, go ahead.
So you said that you have been working for U.S. Steel for 5 years now. So like since you've been out of school, right? Yeah. It's like, what exactly, like, what did you actually like study in undergrad? And then like, what is your position that you do?
That's a good question. So studied business undergrad degree. Is pretty generic in general. What was really cool about that though, being in Chicago, our business campus was down on Michigan Avenue, which had a lot of cool opportunities like down in the heart of a huge city. I knew I wanted to go back to Pittsburgh because my now wife and I at the time, we had been dating since 9th grade of high school. So we knew we wanted to be together for the long haul. And so wanted to make sure I like looked for jobs in the Pittsburgh area. Something about like applying for jobs in Chicago, knowing that I would probably leave, just didn't sit well with me. Kind of the way my brain thinks is like, why put in a ton of work at that said job, knowing that I'm most likely going to leave, if you will. So applied for jobs in Pittsburgh, and my dad has actually been in the steel industry for a while. So steel, I'm such a nerd about. We could probably have a full podcast about steel, but I'd probably bore a lot of the listeners. But it's a really cool commodity. It's a cool industry. And US Steel is a huge company. Actually, a few fun facts. Well, I'll just name one fun fact. It's the first $1 billion corporation. So it's been around for a long time, and huge kind of Pittsburgh pinnacle company. So applied, got it. And what I've done for US Steel now, I've always been in the commercial groups. So anything that really makes the business money is what our commercial groups are, if you will. And right now I'm in our automotive group. So we sell steel that goes into cars. So big flat roll coils spun up, like 40,000 pounds. Typically we sell it to every car company, Toyota, GM, Chrysler, Tesla, Rivian, like every single company. We have a large market share there, and I pretty much handle accounts. And so that job I love. I probably will be there till the day I die. And that's how most people are at our company, which is cool. A lot of people go there, stay there for their whole career, which is what I've always kind of wanted in a job, if you will, in a career. Um, the other stuff mentioned is just all things that just kind of keep my entrepreneurial spirit going. So when I graduated college, graduated in 2018, a semester early, which I'm glad I did. A lot of people said don't do it. Looking back, it would have been fun to be there one more semester. But glad I got a head start in my career and in savings. And then actually decided to live with my now in-laws, because my parents had moved away from Pittsburgh. So I grew up in Pittsburgh. My parents had moved away and lived with my now in-laws. They weren't at the time, for 2 years. So that allowed me to save a lot of money. And I was able to buy a townhouse, my first townhouse, when I was 22. So I kind of house hacked that, actually, which I think is kind of interesting too. So I had a roommate there. He paid most of the mortgage. Didn't pay the whole mortgage, but my cost of living was still reduced. So lived with the in-laws for 2 years, bought the townhouse, had a roommate for 2 years, and then decided to rent that out fully and got a different townhouse. So still renting that out fully. I'm on my fourth year of full rental right now with them. And they're the same tenants. They've been amazing. Quite literally, knock on wood, I've been blessed. I probably put in maybe an hour max of work over the 4 years. And don't know what I'll do long term for that. Do I want to acquire more real estate? Possibly. But yeah, we can dive more into kind of what I do with personal finance. But yeah, I mean, so corporate world wise, full time job wise, I'm doing that at nights. I'm always doing stuff with kids, and then on the side, I'm always researching personal finance. That's a good segue to get into some PF, baby.
Billy, can I just say that over the years, Billy wanted to be a lawyer. Which is his sister.
I actually took the LSAT. Yeah.
Yeah, he sat for the LSAT.
I scored well, but I can explain that more. Keep going. Sorry.
He wanted to be a dentist for a period of time. U.S. Steel was always on the radar. I'm pretty sure you want to be a real estate agent, or you wanted to dive into real estate, which you're doing now. So you actually fulfilled that. Well, there was one more. I don't know what the other one was, but Billy, this is what I'm saying. This is how Billy's mind works. He just he always is pivoting to something like where his passions are, and he just dives into it. And he'll like, Bill, imagine if you did really well in the LSAT and then just ended up going into law school. I
was so close. And why I didn't? So I was actually, I have to take prereqs to go to dental school, and I was signed up to go to Pitt to take 4 prereq classes one semester. And like the day before, I backed out. And why I backed out of law school, of dental school, is the personal finance side of things, like the opportunity cost of going. And at the end of the day, like why I think I'm intrigued by dentistry, like my wife's a dentist, both her parents are dentists, is the business ownership aspect and the hands-on skill aspect. You're almost like a professional athlete. I think any doctors, like you two, you guys have a skill set that people need and want, kind of like a professional athlete does. Whereas I'm just like crunching spreadsheets all day, which is a certain skill, I think, to some people. But yeah, I would always question, so not that the end goal is to have the most money. For me, my personal finance goal is just to be able to do what I want, when I want, with who I want, whenever I want, as early as I can. So if that looks like by the age of 35, I'm so like financially independent, I'll still probably do what I'm doing now because I love it. But I think to go to work not because you have to, because you get to, is so powerful that I don't get to experience yet, and I won't get to experience it yet for a while. Same with you guys. But how cool would it feel is if you wake up, have your coffee, work out maybe, and then go to work because you love it, and then go home, hang out with your kids, and that's your day. that's kind of what I'm aiming towards. So all the personal finance stuff I do with the real estate property, I love like index funds, Roth IRAs, 401ks, all that stuff. And I can babble on that for a while. But at the end of the day, two main things is just like saving as much as you can. So keeping your savings rates high, and then investing early and often, and trying to minimize debt, mainly consumer debt, right? Like credit card debt, not buying a car you can't afford, which we're at this age where I see it with a lot of my friends. They're buying probably more car than they should. And they have like a $700 car payment a month. Can we afford that? All three of us probably could if we wanted to, but we shouldn't. Because that $700 a month can be used for much better things. Now, with that being said, like if your goal is to work to have a nice car, do it. Like that's what you want. But I think for most people, that's not what they want, if I had to guess.
Yeah, and I think you made a really good point, which is like part of why we do the guest series on the podcast, is that the way that you grade and define like what it means to be successful, like just like you said, it's not about like being filthy rich. Like that doesn't define it. It's just, as you said, being financially stable enough to do the things that you want to do, provide for the people you want to provide, and not have to be strapped by debt and these other things that are looming over us, these dark clouds. So I think that's a really good point. It's not about, none of this is about being super successful or anything like that in terms of like filthy rich and that sort of thing, because that's how a lot of people grade it. Because I know that Andrew and I are the same way. Like, I don't care about ever being like a millionaire or something like that. That doesn't appeal to me. But just like you, I want to get to a point where like I don't have to worry. Like I can go to work, not because I have to, but because this is an opportunity. I don't have any more debt now. Like this is kind of cool. Like it feels a lot different. Like I look at my boss, because the practice that I work for is a private practice. So it's a sole owner, and he's had it for like 37 years. And he's like towards the end of his career, he works 3 days a week and takes time off. Like he took the whole month of March off because his birthday was in March, and his wife and him spent it in Napa.
That's awesome.
Like, he like having that ability to have the time. And I think that for me personally, that's my big thing is time. I don't want to be like strapped and be working all the time. Like right now I'm working a little bit more so that later I don't have to. And that's what motivates me. But eventually, like I want to own into this practice and have the ability to, hey, my kids have a game today, I'm leaving early. Like, don't book me for next Friday. Like have that little bit of leniency, I think is a lot better than having a bunch of money.
You said something so powerful. So the earlier you get started, the better, right? Like, so compound interest, if I had the privilege of teaching a high school personal finance course, I would pretty much just touch on compound interest every day, with some other stuff mixed in there, of course. But just as far as starting as early as you can, investing as early as you can, because then a lot of people, I think, okay, I need a high salary to make good money and build up a net worth, right? But that's not the case. Typically, most people make most of their money in investments through long haul, right? Through being in the market, not trying to time the market, but being in the market for a long period of time. And it's the earlier you get started, the better. So that's what I would make sure all kids know is like, hey, when deciding what you want to do in college, or if you want to go to college, if you don't want to, if you want to go to grad school, if you don't want to, just think of your position, what you want to do and why you really want to do it. But again, the earlier you get started, the better you'll be off. So
my dad always, for a background, my dad works in finance and finance and investments, and he helps manage people's portfolios, investment portfolios, and helps them invest in all that. And so Billy and my dad always end up having long, drawn out conversations about that stuff because I can't.
I think I brought up crypto to him once, which was a fun conversation.
You and my dad are cut from the same cloth with investment stuff. Y'all talk the same language. I don't talk that quite yet, although I'm trying to learn. But my dad was always like that. And I think one thing that you said, Billy, was like the people who make the most money salary wise aren't always like the wealthiest though. The people who can save the
Yep.
best are the
That's
people who can actually like I mean, you can make so much money if you learn how to save right, and you're going to outperform salary wise someone who makes a lot more than you because you know how to save correctly. And if $10 a month, or $50 or $100 a month that you're spending on something compounded over 12 months, if you can cut that cost and make those small changes in your daily actions of how you spend your money, that can give you so much more down the line. And so that's something my dad always taught me growing up was like, he taught me to be kind of stingy, even though we weren't in a position where it was like that. Um, but just because he hardwired my brain like that, where I had all my bank accounts in his bank that he works for, First Commonwealth for folks that are listening in Pittsburgh. And before that, it was next tier. So he could always see my transactions. And if I spent like $50 in college, he would text me or call me and be like, "What are you spending this money on?" And I was like, "I'm buying food for the week."
I
Like,
remember
chill.
this distinctly.
Yeah. Like my dad,
which I bet you didn't like at the time, but now you probably appreciate it. Like, because God forbid, like if you went off the rail, like you might not have ever learned,
well, dude, now I'm the most frugal person you're going to meet. Like, I don't
Right.
spend money on much. Like, I am very frugal and, I have the ability to spend money. I just don't because I don't really need to. And that's kind of just because I was hardwired by my dad like that. And so every time I talk to you, Billy, I always want to get more into investments.
Well, the thing
And
too is like so I think personal finance is really a behavior thing, not a numbers thing. So like I control what I can control. I'm not trying to time the market ever. I don't actually even pick individual stocks because I would think too much. It kind of goes back to my kind of whole life mission, if you will, like keeping things super simple, no filter. So it's just all automated into like index funds. And I try to control what I can control, which is my income. So trying to be a really good employee, trying to grow the other things I'm growing, and funneling that big funnel into an avenue like the mutual funds, which I believe will keep growing at that said like 10% rate every year. So it's really not a numbers problem. It's not a math problem. It's a behavior problem. So I could be spending a lot of money, but I'm frugal like you, Andrew. I could have gotten more house than I could afford, car than I could afford. I could go out to eat every lunch or go out to lunch every day, but I don't. I barely go out to eat. I never shop. I never go to the mall. I hate the mall.
yeah,
I drive a very basic car, mainly because I don't want anything other like nicer. I would rather buy experiences than materialistic things, because I get a lot of joy out of that, and I do splurge on experiences. Um, but for me, like personal finance and health, as we talked before, are probably the most two important things. Because if I don't have my health together, I won't be the best husband I can be or the son I can be. If I don't have my wealth together too, same thing. I can't be the best husband I can be. So those two things are really important to me.
if you were to do a crash course for dummies on investing in like a short minute elevator speech on that, like what would be your guidance and your advice to people who want to go into investing
Yeah.
but don't really know where to start
Yeah.
without complicating it, of course?
That's a really hard question,
I
but a good
know.
question. So like I'll act like I'm talking to my wife, Eleni, because she does not like personal finance. I'm the nerd in the relationship with it. So she always says it's too complex. I don't want to touch anything related to it. It's really simple in the sense of you can open up a Fidelity account, a Vanguard account, Charles Schwab account right now, link it to your bank account, and every paycheck you get, you could automate it. Like, okay, I want to put X amount in this fund. And it might take some research to do research into a fund, but essentially what an index fund is too, which I would explain this to my wife too, is it's a conglomerate of a bunch of stocks together, and you're investing into that whole thing. So for example, I love like a high growth index fund that I have. Top top 10 holdings are Apple, Microsoft, Google, or Alphabet. Stocks that I would probably invest individually, but I don't have to think. It just automated into it. And controlling the monthly automations in there is really dependent on your savings rate. So keeping a good savings rate, right? You need to have money to be able to invest in there, and your income. So if you can control your income and your savings rate, you'll have money left over, right? I think a lot of people say they don't have money left over, can't invest because they're not investing first. Wherever, if it's automated, I have a certain amount left at the end. Whereas if I decided to like invest after the fact, be too late. Like I'd almost be behind the curveball, if you will. So with all that being said, I know that wasn't kind of easy. It's open an account tomorrow. You don't have to put in a lot of money either. Putting in $10 a month is even better than nothing, right? Gets the ball moving. And then trying to, again, gain skills and get better at your said thing that you do, whatever it is, to grow your income, and not letting lifestyle creep catch up on you either. So something in the doctor world I see a lot is med school students. They act like a med school student as far as like expenses go. They're not making money at that time. They're residents. They're still not making that much money. But as soon as they get that really good paycheck, they get a new car, they get a house. But live like a resident for as long as you can. Get out of debt as quickly as you can. And then you're not paying the bank. The bank is paying you. So, and that goes to any career too, not just med school, but college. If you have college debt, or if you didn't even go to college, same thing. You still might have consumer debt, credit card debt. So
Yeah, I'm kind of like, I'm in between living to like what my salary is, and as a optometry student still. I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle. My wife and I are really good at saving, and we still live in an apartment right now for one more year to keep saving so we can put a bigger deposit on a house. So like we're really smart about that.
Yeah.
We both have retirement plans through work. She has a Roth. Like we're in discussions about that. I can't have a Roth. I have a simple IRA that I have to like backdoor into a Roth. I still have to like set that up, which I know is not difficult, but I just haven't prioritized it. So like we're really good about saving and stuff and investing. But then the other side of me is I have that little thought in the back of my mind that like I'm making good money now. If there's something that I really want within reason, like I buy it because I can. Like we're still smart with our money. So I feel like I'm kind of like constantly like in that in between of like, I really don't need this, but I'm like, but yeah, I worked really hard and I want it. Especially with like things that involve my health and fitness and stuff. Like when it comes to those sort of things, like I don't sacrifice. Like I get it because I feel like I should,
Well, everyone has their splurge too, and that's certainly something you should spend money on, right? One thing that, and again, this is me being a nerd, when you purchase something, so $100 in today's value is not really $100. If you think about like, okay, the opportunity cost of investing $100 now, 30 years from now, is actually a lot more. So if you start thinking that way, if you're like, oh, I want to buy the whatever $40,000 new car, it's not $40,000. It's really $40,000 times if you invested that or did something else with it, like paid off student loans. It's compounded. And if you think about it in that term, I think that controls also spending. And actually, I didn't talk on this too. Like right after college, I worked at the gym that Andrew and I grew up going to, just at the front desk. And it was the best job ever. And I still ask my wife, I'm like, can I go back and work part-time there? Even though like I really I don't need to. But one, it was an amazing job. It was really easy. But I made, I think like $15 an hour there. And I equated, so I have a salary, right? And when you have a salary, you don't really put like a justification to, okay, dinner was $75. I'm like, oh yeah, I can pay for that. But when you work like an hourly job like that, you're like, oh shit, this was like at least a few hours of my time. I don't know if I want to spend $75 right now. So I think that was probably one of the best things for me too. So if people do struggle with like budgeting or spending, I think if you have a salary job, getting just a part-time job, you don't have to work there much, but just to kind of equate your hourly time and money to something you purchase, I think that's powerful too, which I don't hear many people talk about that topic. So
You're 100% right about that.
I want to ask Billy. Oh, actually, Joe, you want to ask Billy the question we ask a lot of our guests whenever we have them on?
Yeah, I feel like he kind of answered it. So you don't feel the need to spend too much time on this.
Okay.
But yeah, I think we got like the gist, but you can nail it in here. So we always ask everybody their why. It's like, what is your why? What is it, the thing that drives you? Like your purpose.
So I didn't think, like, I know you guys asked this, but I did not think about this at all. Man, and that kind of goes back to, I have so many passions and whatnot. So I feel like I have so many purposes and whys. And this might be cliche to say and somewhat cheesy, but I think my why is just like being my best self. And as cheesy as that sounds, or like, of course, dude, you want to be your best self. I'm kind of like Andrew. I'm a perfectionist, and everything I do, I want to make it gold, essentially. Because I know like my time here on earth is limited, and I want to make sure like I do leave an impact. And that is why I do these other things. Because something for me, it doesn't sit well with me, like knowing that I can live my life, don't really change the narrative at all. And I would still be happy, still be fine, still be successful. But it's would I leave an impact? It's almost like the saying goes like, what do people remember you as when you go, or like, do they talk about you when you go? Not that I need that, but I want to leave an impression on everyone that I touch at the end of the day. And I think that's where my, like, I guess, positive, upbeat energy comes from too, is like life's too short to be miserable. So like an example here, like my job is not glamorous at work, but I make it glamorous. I joke with my coworkers. I have fun with my coworkers, even though it's the least sexy job ever. I do that because I want to make sure that they're having a good time, they're having fun, and they remember me as that. So, and hopefully I make them feel good, because I think they'll remember that more.
There was this reminded me of a video I saw not long ago. I actually shared it to my Instagram story. It was a guy talking about what happens after you pass. And it was like, in 100 years, no one's going to remember who you are. So is the time that you spend getting frustrated about not getting the likes on a post, or driving around in a fancy car for these hypothetical people to look at and be like, oh my gosh, look at that guy, or wearing the coolest clothes. None of that's going to matter. What's going to matter is the effect that you left on people, and the effect that you left on your family. And for some people, that's, generational wealth, or maybe that's your drive, and that's fine. Like, if you just want to provide to create generational wealth, that's an awesome thing, because it's a lasting effect. And I think like it puts it into perspective if you really think about the fact that like when you pass, no one's going to remember what you wore or what you drove, or, whatever you did, besides just the impact that you left on people. And I think that with you, Billy, I feel like that really does, like, you are a bright light in the world. You've always been that way. You just want to create a positive environment for a lot of people. And there's no surprise there. People catch on that real fast. That's what Jonah, within 20 minutes of talking to you, he said that on the podcast. So that's an awesome why. And to each person, there's a different why. And that's why we love listen to people talk. And I could just listen to you talk about personal finance for like a whole entire hour or two. You'll probably get a text from me like tomorrow about setting up a FaceTime call to figure out some type of investment portfolio.
Like I said, hopefully I didn't go too crazy there, but like just keep it simple. And same thing in life. Like actually my friend always says there's beauty in simplicity. I love that. Like, I think so many people complicate their lives. Just keep it simple, keep your relationship simple, your life simple. And then like, I think everything will fall in place the way you want it to. So.
Yeah. And your dad definitely had a big impact on like your entrepreneurship background and your kind of where your mind goes. I remember just like growing up, your dad was always networking or working or going out on the golf course and meeting with clients or whatever it was. Like your dad was always doing that, and that, I mean, your dad's a wise guy, so he probably gave you a lot of positive advice on kind of how to approach finance and personal finance and stuff like that. So I can see how
Yeah,
it trickled down to you.
for sure. Yeah, I was very blessed. The parents I have, so
Yeah. Yep.
learned
Yeah.
a lot from them.
Yeah. And I mean, like the other big part of this, why we do the guest series, is because Andrew and I talked for how many episodes before we had a guest on, you know, at least a dozen, about ourselves and our views and our background and things like that. So we wanted to bring other people in that have different backgrounds, grew up in different ways, and face different adversities and whatnot. So it's always interesting to hear like somebody like you, like that has like really financial background. I mean, and then going even back further, like your parents, you're blessed with parents that were married, that are still together. Even, you know, your wife's parents, like, cause that you're with your wife for so long, that has an influence on you. And so like you had like a really nice like upbringing. Your parents are hard workers. You know, there's like obviously like that had a huge effect on you. But then you also like face adversities and had to make like tough decisions on like the things that you really cared about, like soccer. I mean, that's like a huge one, like we talked about. And then also like making the tough choices on like a career path and whatnot. So it's like this is a really good perspective that we haven't had yet. I mean, they're all different, obviously, but it's always so interesting. And like, I know that I personally gain so much from it. It's like, especially when it's somebody that I haven't met or I don't know personally. And I know that other people that listen to this are going to be able to relate and take away from this. So it's been awesome having you on.
I'd love to ask you guys a question. So one thing that I've been thinking a lot about this recently is something that I'm pondering lately, and it's been the same thing for a while, which is, and I'd love to hear your opinion on it too, but then also get something from you guys if you don't mind. But I think this is it. So I think life is really all about managing stress well. So the example like you brought up, Andrew, my dad, a lot of people in his position would probably be stressed as hell, like would would have a lot going on and whatnot, but he takes the joy out of it. Like he loves life more than anyone I know. And trying to emulate that myself, like it always trickles down into like, okay, I have a lot of stress coming my way. How do I manage it? And do I like make something good with that stress? So that's what I've been pondering lately a lot.
I think that everybody probably feels that way. I know that I do. And two things come to mind: opportunity and perspective. When you were saying that, I think that something that my dad drilled into me growing up, and also like if you listen to the podcast, like you know that my parents were divorced. My mom never had much to her name. My dad, they were both very hard workers. My dad was just a little bit more structured, and so more opportunity there. But I had such a unique perspective growing up with the two different households. And then also like my dad was always drilling that into me growing up, was like, have some perspective. Like you're complaining about these things in your life that like people in other parts of this world or even this country would die to have the opportunity that you have right now, to like have the struggles that you have. Like they would love that because it's so much better than what they're in. And so like I've always carried that with me, and that like when I'm having a bad day at my awesome job or like whatever, I just think like this could be so much worse. Like I have an awesome life. And so like to always have like perspective. And then the other thing is like I take everything as an opportunity. And so when stress comes up, like I try to like get the perspective and then think like, all right, what can I take from this? Like how can I, you know, what can I gain from this experience, even though it sucks, you know? And yeah, like in my, like it's interesting because like my perspective is different than my wife's, and we handle stress differently. And not that she handles it in a bad way by any means, it's just different. And so like when something comes up that is like a shared stressor between us, the dichotomy is like very interesting depending on what it is. It's like some things like really hit me hard, and she's like, listen, like we don't need to worry about this, or like vice versa. So that's kind of interesting too, and we kind of balance each other out in this situation. But yeah, those are my two.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that.
I feel like I'm not a good person to ask this question. If you took Andrew at like 20, like 19 to 22 years of age, I would be like a hot mess when I get stressed. Like in PT school, all I did was work out and I studied. And Jonah, when you were in optometry school, the same is true for you. Billy, probably even with your
In college, that's all
yeah,
I did.
yeah,
Oh,
college, same thing.
Yeah.
So I handled stress really, really poorly for those years, and probably most of college too. But college, you had a little bit more leniency. But yeah, PT school and pretty much my entirety of PT school, I handled stress very poorly. If something came up or I waited to the last minute to do something, I projected all of my stress onto everybody else because I knew that they would take it, and I just wanted help, basically. When I became whenever I moved down to Jacksonville, that's probably when it switched for me. I was working full time in a brand new state, a brand new city. I was living out of multiple Airbnbs because I hadn't signed a lease yet. I just drove down with my car full of clothes and necessities, and I tried to go to different spots and find different apartment complexes that I really enjoyed, and I just toured them until I found something. And even whenever I signed, I had another like 3 weeks until I could move in. So I was working full time and living out of an Airbnb, multiple Airbnbs, and it was just, I think that probably helped sculpt my patience. And then when I started really treating a lot of patients in Jacksonville, it requires a certain level of patience because of different socioeconomic backgrounds and poor time management on their part because of the health illiteracy, that they wouldn't show up to appointments on time, and then they would come back 30 minutes late, and I would only have 30 minutes of the hour to work with them before I have patients the next hour. And then once I took on manager role, I realized that there's always people watching you, whether you like to think that or not. Whether you like to think that people don't catch facial expressions, or you talking to yourself in your office trying to figure out how you're going to freaking make it through the day, people are listening and people are watching. They pick up on body language. So I think realizing that you are serving people and you're serving, you're providing services to people, whether it's your employees, whether it's your patients, whatever it is, people are watching, and I don't want to create a false persona out of just a temporary stress full time. And I also realized that how can I lead somebody if I'm constantly stressed? Like, no one's going to gravitate towards a leader that's stressed and that's freaking out and is emotionally unstable and can't handle their emotions in a stressful time. And in my job, I'm stressed a lot. I'm always stressed because there's always things that need to be done. But just realizing that, like, I think I just became kind of able to tolerate a large workload. And when you're able to tolerate a large workload, you tend to prioritize your time a lot better, which in effect causes less stress. So I know I kind of gave you a big answer there, but it kind of improved gradually over the last like 3 years, particularly whenever I became a manager, because I realized that there were people watching me and that look up to me and look to me for guidance. And when you realize that people are doing that, who are you to be a leader if you can't handle stress appropriately? And if I went into a healthcare provider and they're freaking out and they're moving fast paced, like, that's the last person I want to trust in. I don't want to trust that person with my care. I don't feel like they're gonna be able to provide the best decisions in that moment. So if you can train yourself to be a little bit more calm, cool, and collected, and not really show your emotions on your sleeve, I think that can be of great utility. But I
Yeah.
think the leadership part is what really helped me handle stress. And then everything else is fine. It's all going to be fine.
Right.
I think my girlfriend probably drilled that into my head. She's like, it's not going to matter in an hour. Like, chill out. I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, it's really not. And I think back to some of the most stressful times when I first moved to Jacksonville, and I'm like, I don't even remember like what I was stressed about at the time. You know, my problems are so insignificant now that like if something happens, whatever. You know, like I'm not going to stress too much about it. I'm going to control the controllables, like you said, Billy, and that's it. You know, I have people that look up to me, and they need to see that I'm handling things appropriately and with a mature mindset. And if I'm running around like a chicken with its head cut off, they're not going to gravitate towards that as leadership. So
Yeah.
Yeah, right
And
on.
I think that just another part of like the perspective thing in my specific career is that I see a lot of sick people. I mean, like Andrew too, like obviously people are coming in to get rehabbed from injuries and things like that and surgeries. I see so many like elderly people and some that are not, that are sick and have like these systemic conditions. And it's just like, is another perspective that I'm like, okay, these problems are minimal compared to like what most people have to go through. And the other part of that is just like what you said, Andrew, is and I'm sure you have the same thing, Billy, like anybody in their job has stressors and things that come up. And like for me on the days where it's like mayhem, I just like try and like take a breath and I'm like, Jocko, prioritize and execute. Like I'm not going to freak out because it's not going to accomplish anything. Like what is the most high priority patient or case right now? Okay, let's do that first. And then, all right, what's the next thing? You start ticking those off and then the stress goes down.
Yeah. It's like a snowball effect too, right? Momentum. Yeah. Love that.
we had a brief story. There was a gentleman that came in yesterday, and my boss who oversees a sub-region, so he oversees like South Georgia, two clinics in South Georgia, and then two clinics in North Florida. One of my clinics he oversees, obviously above me, but he was helping a little bit in the clinic the other day, and he told me today, he was like, yeah, that guy that came in right when you were leaving, he passed out yesterday. And we have that happen like semi frequently. You know, people aren't, you know, hydrating themselves accordingly before they come in, or they haven't eaten something in a long time, and then they go and exercise, and then boom, they fall down. And apparently he fell down. And I've been in that situation with my boss before where we've had someone pass out. And that moment is like a very scary moment because you don't know if it's a heart attack. You don't know if, you know, what's going on, if it's just like they're hypoglycemic or something and their blood sugar just dropped really low. But the best thing you can do in a situation is just be calm as the leader and be like, okay, like let's take the steps. And so in the past, Lane, my boss, was in another room whenever I had someone pass out on me, and I picked the patient and I brought their legs up into a Trendelenburg position to help bring the blood flow back. And I called Elaine. I was like, "Hey, Lane, can you come here for a second?" And he just like casually walked out. And the patient ended up being fine, but he came up to me after and he was like, "You just casually called my name, and like there was like a person passed out on the ground. It just didn't sound like an emergency." I was like, "Yeah, because like if you freak out in that moment, it's just gonna make everyone else freak out." And we had patients in the clinic too, so everyone quite literally does gravitate towards probably the most even keel and calm, cool, and collected person in the room, you know. And
Yeah.
a lot of times you don't really have to speak up to know who's the boss in the room. And I think that's something I always took away from my boss is you kind of know you carry yourself with a certain amount of confidence and emotional stability that people gravitate towards that person, and they know without anything besides just you know, body awareness and stuff. Like people just pick up on body language, you know.
Yeah, that's really good. Actually, so in our industry, oftentimes supply chain, it's very tough. Some people can get more loud and almost yelling on calls with customers, other suppliers, and whatnot. But when people go loud, go low, like go softer. And you being calm might piss some people off, actually, if there's like another it's a little bit different than your scenario, but it will calm down the situation so much. So it applies to everything, what you're saying. Yeah, stay calm and collect. And that's a good example.
Yeah.
Really good.
I have that too.
Good job, Andrew.
Yeah. I'm sure that people have that like in all different types of ways and different careers. But I have the same thing. It's like you have a patient with a serious like issue that they're coming in for, and or like you find something incidentally like melanoma or something, and like you just have to like take a breath and like calmly approach like, how am I gonna talk to this patient and tell them that, hey, like you have to go to Will's Eye in Philly today because this is serious, without like making them so alarmed that they like have a breakdown and like freak out. So there's definitely a skill to that for sure.
Yeah, I'm not by any means good at hiding my emotions. Sometimes you catch me in a moment, and
Me either.
like I know patients catch it for sure. Like they definitely see me when I'm stressed sometimes, you know. But
Well, for me, it's like sometimes with the people I work with, if it's like a frustrating situation, this shouldn't be that way. Like I catch myself like showing that I'm frustrated, and I just like walk away because it's like, yeah. But no, I'm like that too. I wear my heart on my sleeve.
yeah, only so much you could do. I try and be successful in most cases, but yeah, go ahead, Jonah.
No, so I mean, this has been like a smooth convo. I haven't even been paying attention, but we've been going for like almost an hour 30 now.
That's the best.
And it's been easy. So we're definitely gonna have to get you back on for sequential episodes where we can deep dive into other topics and stuff.
Yeah.
But Drew, do you have anything else, or Billy? Yeah, if you have anything else.
One thing that would be really cool in the future, just not for me, but just like bringing people on to ask you guys questions. So like you guys talk about a lot, you know, which has been incredible so far. Like I said, I'm an avid listener. You guys could just talk about anything and people would listen. But yeah, almost someone asking you guys questions would be fun too.
That's a good twist.
Everything you asked me, I would love to ask you guys and dive in more in detail. I wanted this to be a conversation as much as I could, but
I
I
feel
don't like
like
to talk about myself that much.
I know,
Yeah,
but
us
we
either.
feel the same way. That's all we do is talk about ourselves. So that's why we love to have guests. We don't like, we love to hear different perspectives.
Yeah.
And I was very confident going into this that there was going to be so much to talk about. I wish I could prep you for Billy, Jonah, but there was no prepping. That dude can educate you on pretty much anything. So no, I mean, that was wonderful, man. Like it was awesome having you on here. Like Jonah said, there's probably going to be some repeat guests and you will be one of those. Maybe we do like a personal finance thing. There's no limitations to this podcast. Like, we're talking about anything and everything. I mean, a lot of what we talk about is fitness right now and work, but we're a game to talk about anything that's going to help educate others and educate us. I learn something from every conversation I have with you, Billy. So, what a blessing it was to have you on here, man. Like I said, or like Jonah said, an hour and 30 minutes just flew by. I didn't even realize it. So definitely grateful to have you on. You bring a lot of unique perspective, and the people that listen to this are going to pick up on that too. They see, a genuine person in an organic conversation. So you're really good at that. You should probably start a podcast. That'd be a good idea for you.
I have the setup.
You do. You definitely do.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Thanks, guys, so much.
Yeah.
Thanks again, man.
Yeah,
Thanks for having
we'll
me
catch you on the next pod. We did say last week, or last podcast, about doing some hats. Jonah did buy one for himself, and it's dope. It's sick. So we will be making some more, and we're probably going to share it to the Instagram soon. But we'll figure out some more designs that we're going to do. And we'll update y'all if y'all are interested in some merch, maybe even some stickers. Let us know. But yeah, thanks, Bill. What a great talk. And we will see you on the next podcast. Thanks a ton.
Peace.
Thanks.
Peace.